If it's not working, fine, I will be against it too, but it is working.
What confuses me about your position, Ellie, is I would have thought in your situation anything that might help identify the killer would be welcome. So in a way, you just have to wait, don't you, and see if they deliver.
It's true what you're saying, but I say this because the course of action for the past 4 years, I've been next to the investigators. I've seen the way they investigated, and I know they relied on telecommunication, which was mainly controlled by Jewish and Israeli people.
This is the sort of controversy about some evidence that the tribunal has got on mobile phone usage.
They're relying mainly on the telecommunication. I was an engineer at the telecom company, and I followed every details of this case. And I know in details that what was done not by the Lebanese authority nor by the International Tribunal.
You think that evidence was manipulated?
Yes, definitely.
How would you try and persuade Eli that he should have more faith in the tribunal?
Israel will be here forever, and we will have to fight it forever. Put this aside. We don't have to say, it's not like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Israel is our enemy. No, Israel is an enemy, is a fact. You don't have to say it every time. Today, look at the evidence. If they are Israelis, fine, question them. If they are only based on telecommunication, and you have a proof that telecommunication can be hacked, fine, question them. But if they're not,
for me, the fact that Israel is our enemy, putting it aside, I have...
not saying it all the time, it's a fact. We don't have to justify it every time. Israel is our enemy. Now let's move on. It is our enemy, and we will fight it till death, for as long as we live. Now what? Now can't we have a democracy? Can't we have freedom? Can't we have a dignity? Maybe Israel will be much more harmed if there's a strong Lebanon. If there is a Lebanon that has justice and equality inside it, that's strong economically, that its young people are not leaving. Maybe this is what Israel is afraid of. Israel exists only to make war. They have no other reason to exist. So maybe peace is what scares them. So let's think differently for once. Let's think more strategically for once. What is their raison d'être? We should think differently how to resist.
Okay, if any political party in Lebanon was accused in those murders, what will it do? It will create major conflict between Sunnite and Shiite, right? Because today...
Let me just explain what you're saying. Basically, the tribunal is thought is going to name people from Hezbollah, the Islamic movement in the south, and you think that will create conflict.
Then we'll see the next 30 years in Lebanon, wars going on. At the end, Israel, what does she want in Lebanon? To create chaos. We accuse Hezbollah on false evidence. This is what I'm feeling the most. And we rely on wrong evidence to accuse someone. What I feel this home is it's everything being lobbied to create chaos in my country.
The two views are really that Rana's saying long term you need to have accountability and you need to have processes that will make Lebanon more democratic. And you, Eli, are saying you think this process is politicized and is going to create conflict in the country.
True. I'm fearing it will create. Maybe it will not. Maybe it will accuse the right person who did the case based on real evidence.
And the thing that's so striking about this conversation is that two intensely personal experiences you've had of losing your father and your stepfather have become a political debate.
And they were political assassinations after all. So the debate must be political. And we shouldn't always be afraid of it being political.
Rana Khoury, and we also heard from Eli Hajj talking to Owen Bennett-Jones. During the unrest in Egypt over the past couple of weeks, the world-famous Egyptian Museum next to Tahrir Square in Cairo was right in the thick of things. Well, there was no major break-in, but nevertheless, thieves did get inside at some point, doing some damage and getting away with a few valuable items. I asked the Egyptian Antiquities Minister, Dr. Zahi Hawass, what was stolen.
We found that 8 objects are missing. The most important object, it's a head of a princess from Amarna period, a statue of a goddess holding King Tut in a small figure, a statue of the Saturn giving offering, and the number 8 is like 11 shawaqs that they are dated from the reign of Yuya and Tuya. That dated back 3,200 years ago.
And so how important are they to the collection in the museum?
They're very important. Anything that belongs to ancient Egypt is very important to civilization and history.
So just describe the circumstances of what happened. Did people manage to get into the building then?
Yes, there is few people who were able to use the back stairs and go to the top of the museum and break the glasses and use ropes and go down for 8 meters. And they began to break showcases, about 13 showcases, and they thrown 70 objects in the ground.
Is there any chance you will be able to recover these items?
Of course, there is a big chance because no one really can sell them, because no one will buy them. But I'm afraid maybe they do not understand the value of these objects and maybe they broke them. We are looking, and the reason that when I did the announcement today, the announcement was made because I need everyone to be aware that it's very important that everyone has to put his eye on these statues.
Is there a danger, though, that they could find their way perhaps into the hands of private collectors abroad?
I don't know. We will see. I cannot give you an answer, but we are making a big investigation now.
And who is carrying out that investigation? Is it the police?
Myself with the police, yes.
Because, I mean, presumably some of these items could just be at people's homes. It's going to be hard to find them, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think they will try to sell them. If they will sell them, we'll be able to find them easily.
Do you think that in general, given the upheaval that Egypt has seen, that its ancient artifacts, its treasures have survived, on the whole, remarkably unscathed?
I have to tell you, thanks God, that all the treasures in the Cairo Museum are safe. Thanks God that not major artifacts were stolen. Thanks God that only these 8 objects were stolen.
That was Dr. Zahi Hawass. You're listening to the BBC World Service. This is James Menendez with NewsHour. A reminder of our main news today. Egypt's military authorities have dissolved parliament and they've suspended the constitution, which currently bans many political groups from taking part in elections. Talking to NewsHour, the Middle East envoy Tony Blair urged the military government in Egypt to follow through on its promises.
The two key things now are to make sure, one, that you get a proper democratic process, and this is something that's got to be managed. You know, you need a managed transition here. But the second thing is to get the reforms necessary.
And one other headline this hour, Burmese state media have warned the pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi against supporting Western sanctions on Burma. It's their first direct criticism of her since she was released from house arrest back in November. You're listening to the BBC. This is James Menendez with NewsHour. Now, you may or may not have heard of speed dating. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted, but it usually involves, say, 20 men and 20 women in a room. The women sit down at a small table each, and the men get perhaps 3 minutes with each woman. At the end, both groups mark on a piece of paper who they'd like to see again, and if there are any matches, that couple get to exchange details. So there's often a fair bit of alcohol involved. Well, something similar has now been tried out in New York, but there's no alcohol, and all those taking part are Muslim. It's all the idea of Jamal Mohsin, the founder of MilanUS.com. I asked him how the idea had come about.
I started actually doing on an individual basis. I'm in a business, I'm a stockbroker and financial advisor. People knew me, so they asked me for their children if I knew a good match. On an individual basis I started, but it was not giving me that kind of result that I wanted. So I organized an event, and I have this organization called MilanUS.com, and Milan means get together in Urdu, Hindi, Bangladeshi, and so it's perfect meeting place, a platform for Muslims, singles to get together and find a match themselves.
And how does this speed dating itself actually work?
Everyone is familiar with speed dating. It's no different, except we call it speed meeting. And the reason is that dating means that it's a guy and a girl. But here, it's not just guy and a girl, but also family members, sometimes parents, sometimes aunts and uncles, who are accompanied with these people. And what we allow them is that they can be there in the same banquet hall that we hold this event, and they can see their children but they cannot hear what they are talking about because we keep them on one side with other parents, and then we give them an opportunity to guys and girls to talk to each other and get to know each other.
But doesn't it cramp their style a bit, having their parents or chaperones there?
Some kids who grew up here and they do not like this idea, but the reason we do it because we want to keep everyone happy. So it's like a East meet West. The Eastern way is only parents' wishes where they want their children to get married. Here, now, they like someone, and then after the dinner, there is an open session where their parents also get to meet whoever they like, and then they pursue their traditional way after that, that if this is a real match.
Does it work?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I mean, we started it end of 2007, so it's only 3 years, and we had about, so far, 10 Muslim matrimonials in major cities, like mainly New York, but we have Houston and Washington also. And what we have found out is that about 26 of our participants, it means 13 couples, got married through our efforts.
Some people have complained about it within the Muslim community, haven't they?
Of course, there's always going to be some people who are not happy, but most of the people, they like this idea because it's much needed service. I started this as a social work, as a community project to help Muslim community to have a platform, because as you know that Muslim, they keep it segregated, you know, the genders, male and female. So it's very hard for people, young kids, to find a match, you know, within their faith.
That was Jamal Mohsin talking to me a little earlier. Well, as I promised a little earlier in the programme, our arts reporter Vincent Dowd has now joined me in the studio, looking very smart. You look like you've just stepped off the set of Reservoir Dogs.
Looking
Vincent.
totally dishevelled, actually. It's cold and wet out there, which it always is on BAFTA night, however.
Well, we did steal your thunder slightly by revealing that the best film went to The King's Speech. No surprises there. Give us the rest.
Do you know what? I think no one at home at that point actually fell over with surprise. You're quite right, James. Well, it wasn't quite the total free run for The King's Speech that you might have expected. But yeah, they won the big ones. They kind of got the best British film. They got the best overall film. They got the BAFTA for best actor. They got the best support actor for Helena Bonham Carter. They didn't actually get the best director for Tom Hooper, which I think a lot of people over at the Royal Opera House, which is 3 or 4 minutes up the road from where we're talking now, were a bit surprised at. That actually went to David Fincher for the Social Network. So the Social Network, which also got a BAFTA for best adapted screenplay, not for best original screenplay, for Aaron Sorkin. That did well enough. I suppose the big loser tonight was 127 Hours, the Danny Boyle film, which didn't get anything whatsoever. So overall, yes, no huge surprises over at the Royal Opera House, but certainly an awful lot of pleasure that The King's Speech had done so well.
And just tell us, how does the voting work? I mean, do the people who take part in the vote like to sort of spread the awards around a little bit, and certainly presumably not want to be seen to be too partisan towards a British film?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the BAFTAs are not like the César in France, they're not like the Goyas in Spain. They're not primarily to push the local film industry, but of course they kind of have that as a secondary thing to do. They're really there to reward merit in cinema. Some people, until a few years ago, used to say, oh, that means we end up rewarding an awful lot of Hollywood stuff. Well, there is a fine line between the UK and the US film industries, but it's voted on by the industry. And actually, I think you can be too cynical about this. I think people do genuinely vote for what they think is the best. I mean, they care about their industry as broadcasters do, or footballers do, or whatever. They want the best to prosper. And I think, by and large, the best films have got the big awards this year.
Any others did well? I mean, it has been so far in all these awards, and then the lead up to the Oscars, really between the Social Network and The King's Speech. Any others pick up the odd award?
Well, The King's Speech, by my reckoning, got 7 out of 14. Well, people thought that True Grit, the new Coen brothers film, the sort of remake of that old 1960s cowboy film, would do well. Well, it got best cinematography, but otherwise it didn't really feature. No, this was The King's Speech, and Inception and The Social Network. It was their night. Inception really getting it for rather technical categories, production design, special visual effects, sound and so on. But it was good to see that there was a little bit of distribution around the various very worthy films which have arisen in the last 6 months or so. It started out, I felt personally anyway, as quite a flat year for cinema. It ended up being a very good year for cinema.
How glitzy was it? I mean, it's not the Oscars, is it? But
No.
They're trying.
Well, okay, I'm going to give a totally honest answer to that. I think they lacked a little bit of Hollywood glamour. I've done this for, what, 3-4 years now. There have been more big Hollywood names there. I mean, James Franco wasn't there, nominated for Best Actor, but I think he knew perfectly well that Colin Firth was going to get it. Natalie Portman, who got the Best Actress BAFTA, wasn't there because she's pregnant and didn't want to travel from the USA, which is perfectly fair enough. So it lacked a little bit of glamour, and it was pouring with rain. But you know, the best thing they ever did with the BAFTAs was, what, 4 years ago now, they moved it from a slightly crummy cinema in the centre of town to the Royal Opera House, and the Royal Opera House looks beautiful on screen, and of course that's what it's all about. It's now on a time delay on BBC One television. It's seen around the world, and it's a wonderful wedding cake kind of theatre. It looks elegant, and everyone dresses up, and the red carpet, even in the pouring rain, actually looks rather good. So it is a much bigger event than it used to be.
Vincent, thank you. You look pretty good yourself. Vincent Dowd, our arts reporter there. Now, a couple of Facebook comments I just want to read you. This is responding to the news earlier that Italy wants to send security forces to Tunisia to stem the flow of refugees who've arrived in the past few days, some 4,000. Mohammed writes, no way. Tunisia is an autonomous country. No one has the right to occupy Tunisia by any means. We've just got our freedom back, not to let it be stolen again by foreigners. We'll fix our problems alone. And Yitzhak writes, why is it that Italians don't want to receive immigrants? There are Italians all over the world who emigrated from there when times were tough. Italians are just selfish people. Join the debate at Facebook. Just type in BBC News Hour or email us, worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com. But that's it for this edition of News Hour. From me, James Menendez, and the rest of the team here in London. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
BBC. What can I wear? What can I do?